the contractors with BIM capability. And if they weren't BIM capable, they would have to make it up in their own firm. So again, in the end, we ended up with one model with everything inserted down to the warranty date, installation date. And I thought this was a nice fact. We were originally planning on this project being a LEED Silver project. We actually ended up achieving a LEED Gold in the project. A lot of the coordination between the mechanical and structural, we were able to figure out the exact energy usage of the HVAC system, and we were shy a few points, and we worked out the exact energy usage, and we were able to get LEED Gold in the project.
So that was the LEED Gold through the construction manager as he made substitutions. That's right.
We actually found out that there were very few substitutions in the project, but the few that we did, we recalculated, and we were able to retrieve LEED Gold. That's it for my presentation. Any questions? Yes?
So on one of the beginning slides, you showed the organization rules, and you mentioned a cost estimation service. Did they actually physically get in the model and use model quantities to do cost estimation?
At the time, we were, again, this was a few years ago, they weren't as involved in the modeling itself. They were primarily doing everything, they were running everything through their calculation systems, but they were not in the BIM model itself.
Okay. Have you had experience recently with estimators doing takeoffs in models, or have you really gotten to that yet?
We have. It's been getting easier. Revit's been getting a lot more advanced with their takeoffs, and we've been using it a lot more for estimates, internal estimates more than anything. I haven't worked with an outside firm for it yet, but I shouldn't say that, but yeah.
What was the project delivery method for this? Was it a CM at risk? Was it
CM at risk, yes.
And so you guys spent quite a bit of time probably setting up all of your schedules, especially the MEP guys, setting up all of their schedules and spec sheets, both in the model and in the project manual.
Yeah, we had I think our manual, our specification sheets were about a 3 or 4 3-inch binder stick of just everything, because we need also for LEED as well.
Right.
But we spent that debate that I mentioned earlier about getting what the responsibilities, that took about 3 months of deliberation between the contractor. This was not just the responsibilities, we were also talking about the scheduling and all that as well.
So the county was okay with the idea that, you know, I'm the county, I'm paying the design team to specify and schedule a trained system for all of my air handlers and exterior equipment, and then I'm going to be okay with the CM then having their tradesmen change that out completely.
A lot of the there was, I mean, because it was a state job, we had to provide or equal for all the specifications. So we ended up having the capability of switching items, but I think for the most part, because of what we chose and how well they all worked together, there was not as many substitutions as you would think in this project for the HVAC, especially with the LEED calculations. We wanted to keep it as close as we could to the original calculations.
Was the fee for this project advantageous for the designers and the constructors, since you were at a very high, extreme level of BIM? Or is this just business as usual for Broward County?
Probably was business as usual for Broward County.
This is their standard on their project?
Yeah, they had their set rates and they wrote up the contract for everything in that project. I wasn't involved myself in that, so I can't really answer much for it. But I know that they set it all up.
So what I'm curious about is, you know, going to that level of utilizing COBE standards is very stringent for any contractor.
Oh yeah.
So I would think that would limit your pool as to contractors that can work on that in any part of the country. So that's.
We were lucky. We had the contractors involved very early in the project, and they were fully aware of what was going to be required, and they were capable.
So did the county go out and advertise for CM saying, you know, us have these capabilities, and then
Yeah.
they chose from that?
I believe they already had a CM in mind when they were going out, but they opened up the bid, of course, but the CM that was already in mind won the bid. But the, yeah. Let's see. Say something.
They wrote the RFP to get me one.
Yeah. But it's also kind of limited too, you know, with those kind of.
Well, as I said,
Standards.
going back to the specs and substitutions, and if you present this long book of specifications, and then also put the bidder in charge of rewriting a bunch of information and databases in the model, then suddenly that's also self-limiting and also making them more inclined to say, screw it, I'm just gonna go with what they specified and not change things, so.
At the end of the day, with this kind of handoff between what you're doing design and then of course the contractor then taking over, I mean, did you still have to deliver 2D documents at some point for the contract?
Oh, yes, of course.
Okay, but you know, this is always the thing that comes up when people are afraid of turning over their model or sharing their model. So
Yes.
did that, because of all the standards that you put in place and having a pretty solid execution plan, did you find that that was all helpful?
I believe so. It was a pretty smooth handoff when we completed the project. I mean, we went through many revisions. The county was very, at the end of the day, the documents weren't changing at all. The contractors were only really inserting more information into the project. So even when we received the as-built, I mean, maybe a wall shifted 6 inches left, 6 inches right. That wasn't a big change in the documentation itself. But that model was full of information that we didn't want to control. Because that was really on the contractor side to control.
But it seems like your PXP was kind of you know, living and growing as you went along, because you'd either run across something that wasn't known or thought of, or maybe somebody actually had a better idea.
Yeah, it was
some of these meetings, and you kind of went with it. Is that true?
Essentially,
It
yeah.
kind of sounded.
Yeah, pretty much. We were, like I said, it was always evolving. We were discovering, you know what, this actually should be on the BIM execution plan because it should be standardized, because we were trying to create that standard for Broward County. So as we would present it to the owner would say, can you add that to the BIM execution plan, because it would be nice to have that as a future reference for the future projects.
So is that an additional service? You said sure, it's going to cost you?
It was part of our contract to do it, to change it the entire time, unfortunately.
So what takeaways can you offer from it?
So we found it, well, as we developed it, it was a pain, but now that we have it complete, it led us to be a little bit more organized in our development of future projects. So I think it was most beneficial to just, even as a firm ourselves, it just brought us a bit more organization to deliverables and roles and responsibilities. At the time, we didn't really do too much BIM. I was actually one of the first people in the office to even touch Revit for the longest time. I was doing rendering, I was doing all sorts of stuff. And when they sent me down to Florida to this big BIM project, we've never done BIM before, so we were learning ourselves the entire time. So it kind of established our own firm's standards as we went. And just having that document as a nice reference to come back to, okay, we should be doing this during the project. We should be following these steps, or we suggested to the owner, this should be what we do.
So production of all the contract documents, that was all done onshore or was it offshore?
I actually was I drafted the entire architecture set. I know that set back and left and right, back and forth. We did have offshore drafting capabilities, but due to the nature of this project, we were constantly going on the field, constantly updating something. It was a lot of back and forth as well with the ownership, that we didn't find it efficient to send it overseas as often as we could have.
Did the model exist in your office or was
Yes.
it in the cloud?
It was always in the office in this case. We would have liked to have it in the cloud, but we didn't have the capabilities at the time.
So how did you share that model with?
We had a localized FTP server that we would send a link to the different firms and the ownership.
What can you tell us about your experience with copyrights while sharing the model?
I'm not really sure how to answer that, honestly, myself.
Did you have any issues that you noticed that someday somebody changed our portion which
Well,
not
the model,
supposed to?
the model that was uploaded to the FTP, we were the only ones able to, the architecture, the MEP team, and the structural team were the only ones able to upload to the FTP, and no one was allowed to edit on the FTP or, so the current file was always localized, and at the end of, by, like I said, every week we would upload the file at the end of the day. That was the file for their reference only. It wasn't necessarily for any editing, so, and we never had any issue with our team as well with that.
Have you ever signed electronically files or signed and stamped? Or that was all only hard copies?
I think that was only hard copies. That we had any liability items or copyright items on.
Did you have a chance to go back and talk to facility manager if he's using the model 100%?
I didn't personally get to. I talked to my to the construction the construction administrator on this project, and he told me that they were using it fully. So,
How large was the file?
I think the architecture file alone was about 1 gigabyte, and combined with all the other files, if we had it on a simple computer, it wouldn't run the file. We were using the most powerful computer in their office, and even then it was struggling. So it's a big file. It would take about an hour. Our office didn't have the best internet at the time either. It would take about an hour to download all the different bits and pieces just because of how intense all the files were.
Did you try VR on it? Or?
VR? I know we were capable of doing it. I know that BIM, the A360 glue, you can hold the iPad and see like where the pipe is. I didn't personally get to do it, but I know that they were using that on the field constantly for coordination. So you had your hand up earlier?
I was just curious, so you would hand in your model to the owner on Friday at 5 o'clock, and
Yep.
you'd get comments back when, Monday?
He was very quick at reviewing. He would probably give us his own comments Tuesday, but the weekly upload was more of a here it is, this is the progress we're at, and he didn't really give any real review, like deep reviews until the submissions, or the typical submissions. So if he saw anything blaring that he wanted to bring up, it would be brought up during our weekly meeting as well. So it was mostly just a formality to give the owner the progress.
So he just overwrote every week, you just overwrite whatever models
Yes.
filed previously?
Yep, pretty much. I'm sure, I'm not 100% sure on how they filed their own files, but if he voided it out or if he just overwrote it entirely, but with the frequency of it, I'd hope he overwrote it. Anything else? Yes.
So, I've got a job coming up, and we're a construction manager, where we're doing a remodel job, and we've been tasked with the project of scanning the room and then inserting all the HVAC and all the electrical and all the other items and coordinating them.
Yep.
So have you got any experience with that, and can you offer any suggestions on how to make that work best?
I know that I haven't done it personally, but I know that we have our sister firm that does a lot of BIM management. So they do a lot of 3D scans and whatnot, and my associate here could talk more about those capabilities.
Yeah, we can.
So maybe you can give us a card.
Yeah.
Just curious about the model managers, or the BIM managers, was there one from each designed entity? So was there an architectural BIM manager and a structural MEP, or was there one or a couple of them that were kind of disassociated with each design firm that then did the clash detection, disseminated all that information to the design firms?
So the way we had it work out was, at our office we had our own BIM manager, and which I ended up learning with and taking over the role at the end. In the MEP office, they had their own management and the structural as well. We all had our own meetings together separately from the design team at times. Of course, I was involved in all the meetings at this point, but we all coordinated together. It was, I think, total 3 at a time.
In case of technical support, did you have any support from a dealer or from Autodesk?
So at the beginning, we had a support from a BIM company, and as they got just specifically for modeling purpose, just because a lot of us weren't 100% sure on how to model every single bit and piece. But once we got the idea and everything, we were weaned away from them and we took over the rest of the project. We probably with them for the schematic and a portion of the design development. Once we dug into 50 to 100% CDs, we were on our own on the project. And at that point, we were capable of all the modeling, all the BIM needs we had.
So this being, it sounds like your office's first real big Revit project. How did you find the learning curve, and more importantly, how have any of the lessons from that been applied since then? So it's been a few years since the project was complete. So have you guys seen your kind of efficiencies or facilities within the software improve since then because of the organization, or because you just know more tips and tricks? And more importantly, how have you been able to then manage that as the kind of Revit doer up to the kind of design authors? Because I know they're not always the same person, and expectations from one to the other can be something conflicts in certain offices.
So again, it was our first BIM project. Essentially it set the standard for all our future projects. I had my hand in the project, and we were able to teach our drafters, and we also acquired more BIM capable professionals as well, and this project kind of set that standard. We still look back at this project as a lot for reference and everything. It was a big stepping stone for our firm. Really, now we pretty much do all Revit now for all our projects. We barely touch CAD except for maybe like a small project that's not really worth going full 3D. A small structural fix. So I'd say it was a challenge to teach everyone the formatting as well. But in the end, it's been a big benefit.
How was your cooperation with the firms who use AutoCAD?
So for this project, well, if they couldn't use Revit when they were using AutoCAD, it was a learning curve. We actually had to do a bit of a few sessions to kind of like teach the structural engineering team was the one that had the AutoCAD base rather than Revit base. So they were doing their first BIM project as well. So we sat down with sessions with them, taught them a bit. They also had their own. They also had brought them their own outside help as well to kind of teach them how to use it. Due to the nature of this project, we really had to develop everything in 3D. That was the county really wanted this project to be fully BIM, and the minimal CAD, the better. So it was a lot of teaching, a lot of learning during this project for all parties.
So you 3D scanned the whole 4 stories to generate the existing conditions?
I wish. The 3D scanning, I wish we could have done 3D scanning at the time. We didn't have that capability. I was a 3D scanner in this case. I would be going out there with a tape measure and a laser and gathering every single bit of information. It took about, again, 2 months to catch every bit of information. If we had a 3D scanning capability, it would have been a lot quicker. now we have that capability, so.
So what was your threshold for what's significant as far as clash detection? I mean, if you went out there and tape measure and laser to get stuff out of it.
We were looking at about an 1/8 to a 16th for our tolerance. And the only item that we ever had issue with was a clash about a 1/4 inch in the 3rd story. There was one beam that was a little bit lower than all the other beams. It was a poured concrete construction, so imperfections here and there. The one beam caused a bit of a headache. We had to just adjust the location of some ductwork because of it.
Yeah, question. You mentioned the civil on the job and the landscape architect were still using AutoCAD.
Yes.
Was any of their work converted, for lack of a better term, into the model environment? Was any extra work done with those?
That was they were contracted to do AutoCAD work from the beginning, and they stuck with it for the full project. And the county had no issue with that because they weren't using the landscaping or the civil for any of their facility management system. So for them, AutoCAD was acceptable.
So at the end of the day, that work product, was that not a part of your facility management?
It was not part of our facility management package in this case. Any questions?
Was the county very much involved in schematic design? Did you have to do a lot of renderings?
So I believe we spent about 3 months in the schematic phase, talking with every single official of each office. Each office had different requirements, and we had probably a 500 sheet package from requirements for each office that we developed ourselves for adjacencies and all that, and they were very involved in every step of the design, the schematic design. We would have meetings. At the beginning, we had meetings bi-weekly with each office to get that coordinated to make sure they were.
How did you visualize that? On hard copies or?
We would provide hard copies, and we would also provide renderings as well. And more renderings developed. Although these are images, I actually rendered every single one of these images for each group. And it was actually pretty pleasant when I saw the picture and it looked identical. But we provided them with all the tools. We gave them all the samples. We would sit down with each firm and each group and just show them what we were intending, and they were very happy the entire time. They were informed the entire time as well. They were allowed as well to, not just the county, but each office had the capabilities of reviewing the model at the same time as the ownership. So they were